way, the Rebbe said what I'm saying about the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Rebbe said it about the Frierdiker Rebbe and his father, the Rebbe Rashab, and he based it on a Rambam. I'm not going to go into it now, but that was his point, that the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe's father, the Rebbe Marash, passed away, and it wasn't for 11 years that he sat in his father's place. His father passed away in 1882, and he took the seat of his father in 1893, Rosh Hashanah. And the reason, because he had an older brother, Reb Zalman Aaron der Azor, and because of Kibud Ach Hagodol, because of halachically, you have to respect your older brother, which is good to know.
I agree.
I agree too. I'm the oldest. Anyway, so he wouldn't sit on his father's place till his brother left Lubavitch for Vitebsk. So when his brother moved to the city of Vitebsk, that's when the Rebbe Rashab, the younger brother of Shalom Ber, took the liberty of sitting in the same place of his father. But the Rebbe, so for years, Hasidim kind of said that, although his father passed away 11 years ago, he became like a Rebbe in 1893, 11 years later. The Rebbe explained in this talk, no, that's wrong. He became a Rebbe in 1882, the day his father passed away. So the Rebbe taught us this only in 1983. I think I was at the Farbrengen. So we understand from this, the same is true for us, that although the Rebbe officially accepted the leadership of Chabad in 1951, January of 1951, a year after his father-in-law passed away in 1950, it makes sense to say the same thing, that the Rebbe really became the seventh Lubavitcher Rebbe, our Rebbe, the day when his father-in-law passed away. If you're not happy with my explanation and you don't want to accept it, you're welcome. But that's the way I see things. But officially, the Rebbe accepted the leadership a year later. And I want to just briefly, there's so much to talk and say historically, but it's not a lesson in history. For that, you have many of my books, which I've written extensively about all of these things, because I focus on history of Chabad. But briefly, I want to open with a story that's relevant to what I just told you. I don't think anyone in this room knows the story. If you know the story, you'll tell me, you'll correct me. And this is what happened. The previous Rebbe had 3 daughters. The youngest daughter was Shena. She married a gentleman named Mendel Horenstein. Nebuch, they were murdered in Treblinka in 1942. The other 2 daughters were Chana and the Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka. Those 2 daughters, the oldest was Chana, and she married a person by the name of Rabbi Shmaryahu Gurari, who in Chabad is known as the Rashag. I have a book there called Rebbe and Rashag, the whole history of the Rebbe and the Rashag and the transition and what was going on. And there's a lot to say, but briefly, in 1950, as the year was going on, most Hasidim wanted the youngest son-in-law, our Rebbe, to be the Rebbe. Now, let me explain this to you. The Rebbe was a very quiet person. He didn't want to be seen. He didn't want to be heard. He wanted to do one thing, learn and daven and work and help people in his own quiet way, which he did. His older brother-in-law, Reb Shmaryahu Gurari, was a statesman. He wore a top hat. He wore a gray capota. he was a statesman. You know, he was taller, whatever.
Extrovert.
And he was definitely an extrovert. And he came from the family Gurari. And the Gurari family in Chabad, for those that know, are very sophisticated people, very bright people, intelligent and sophisticated. So he had the wherewithal that some few Hasidim thought would be a good statesman as a Rebbe. But most Hasidim said, no, a Rebbe is not a statesman. A Rebbe is a tzaddik, a holy man. And specifically, this younger son-in-law, who's so quiet and so unknown, but they started to, when he came here in 1941, he was here in Brooklyn in 770 for 9 years. And they started to hear him a little bit and talk to him. And he was very approachable. The Rashab was not as approachable. And they found him to be a genius of Torah. Anything they asked him, he knew. And not only did he know, but he had the patience of explaining it to you, sitting with you. So they said, this is the real McCoy. This is the real Chevraman. This is the real guy who should be the next Rebbe. Because he's so quiet, because he's so unknown, he's hiding from us. And we now know who the real tzaddik is, so we want him. But like in every situation, when you have an older and a younger, right? And you have children, you have son-in-laws, daughter-in-laws, family. It's not that simple. Well, it was that way too. And what am I getting at? So in the summer of 1950, there was a very big meeting in 770. And they demanded most Hasidim of the Rebbe to be our Rebbe, the next Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he got very upset and he said, I can't do this. And I have an older brother-in-law. I don't want to be involved in fights and politics. Just leave me alone. And they put pressure on him, a lot of pressure. Now, I'm going to go back now to Israel, to Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, there were also great Lubavitcher Chassidim, and it's hard to believe if you go to Tel Aviv today, it looks like, Broadway or Hollywood sometimes. But Tel Aviv in the 1920s and 30s had thousands of Hasidic Jews. Did you know that? Thousands, and many of them were Gera Hasidim, not Chabad Hasidim. And there was also Chabad Hasidim, and there was Vishnitz Hasidim. Gera, Tel Aviv was a hub, was a place for Hasidim. They all subsequently left when Tel Aviv became more modern, etc., etc. But there is a section next time you're in Tel Aviv called Nachlat Binyamin or Nachlas Binyamin. Today it's become a midrachov. There are cars that don't go there. There's artists. It's a very trendy area. You've been there, Daniel. Yeah. Okay.
It's an arts market.
An arts market. That's what I'm talking about. On that street, I forget the address. I did film it on one of my YouTubes. There was a Lubavitcher shul in a little steeple in a 3-story building, I believe. And in that shul, there were big Hasidim of the 5th Lubavitcher Rebbe and the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, who would daven there, and they would Farbrengen, and they would teach Chassidus, and they would talk with each other. It was a very special place. My father, as a 15-year-old boy, would ride his bicycle and park it and go into the shul. So he told me about it as well. And I heard from many Chassidim about this shul. It was one of a kind type of a shul. It was like in Russia, in Lubavitch, in Eretz Yisrael. That was the sentiment. The feelings of the people there was like they were in Lubavitch in Russia, but transplanted where? In Tel Aviv, in Nachlas Binyamin. One Shabbos during the summer, there was a Kiddush, and at the Kiddush, the 2 brothers, Reb Shmerel Gurari and Reb Moshe Gurari, 2 Hasidic brothers of the Gurari, were talking with each other, and they say like this. You heard? You heard? Our cousin, they also called him Shmerel, Rebbe Garari from Brooklyn, wants to be the next Rebbe. Now, they knew their cousin. He was a special person, but he wasn't a Rebbe in their opinion. He was a statesman. He knew a lot of Hasidus. So they were like laughing, like, it's our cousin. We know our cousin. You guys know your cousins.
So I have to spend a few minutes reconnecting. You learn. Is it like more? Robust. That's probably why satellite streaming, watching satellite is more updated.
So I'm dedicating this Farbrengen to a chassid who I personally knew and who we knew from the Rebbe, and maybe even knew him in Sheepshead. His name was Tzvi Tzatskis. Tzvi Hirschberg Rebbe Yisrael Tzatskis, who was known in Chabad as a person who sang at Koishel Bracha. He would park himself next to the Rebbe, him and his brother, for years. He came to America, I think from Russia in 1971, and the Rebbe took a very strong liking to him and his brother. And he married, had children, and Baruch Hashem, Bashgocha Pratis, he was born on Yom Kippur, and he passed away on Yud Shevat. And Yom Kippur is Yud Tishrei, and Yud Shevat is Yud Shvat. So he passed away the same day. He was a Tairi, and he was a Russian chassid. And I want to, for a moment, explain this to you. I know we have some people in Russia here, and Lubavitch comes from Russia, and it's important to know where we come from. And for a moment, every culture has its makeup. Someone from Eretz Yisrael is one culture. Someone from America is another one. Someone from Morocco is a third one. Someone from Russia is a fourth one. And if you study the culture and you look at historical trends in the culture, you have a better understanding. So Reb Tzvi, a friend of mine and I opened a shul on Avenue J, East 31st Street, about 27 years ago. And then we moved it over to Coney Island between H and I. And I was the Rav, and this Balabas, Lubavitcher, was the person in charge of all the things in the shul. Anyway, that's when Reb Tzvi, who lived not far away at the time, started to come. I mean, I knew of him. Like I said, I saw him at Kaishel Bracha. But I didn't really know him. Who is this man? Where is it? And in talking to him, he told me how Chassidim would hide in his house, Berkechein. These were known Lubavitch Chassidim. And the flavor of Chabad was in his bones. Now you see, just for a moment, when you identify with a culture and you identify with a group, and in our case, when you identify with a Chassidus, in this case, Lubavitch, Chabad, Lubavitch, it comes with a package. And the package determines who you are. Everyone could be a Lubavitcher and everyone could be a Chassid. But, as we say in the Gemara, actually Kabbalah, is Chesed, is Chesed. Is Lubavitch, is Lubavitch. There is Lubavitch and there is Lubavitch. So the first question you have to ask is, what are these two Lubavitches? It's not one Lubavitch. The answer, of course, it's one Lubavitch if you make it be one Lubavitch. And the proof to my argument, Rabbi Cohen, is the Rebbe's letter that he gave out for Yud Shvat 1951. This I'm sure you know. He writes there, and in the Maimah that I taught this week, the first Maimah of the Rebbe, Pasha Lagani, when he was Kabbalah B'Siyas, he says there are Mekusharim and there are Hashayochim Elov. What's the difference? A Mekusher means someone who's bound and connected with their soul to the tzaddik. Shayochim Elov are individuals who are what they would call today friends of Chabad. Strong friends, good friends, real friends, but they're friends. It's not your blood. Mukushara means it's part of your DNA. The Rebbe says both types are part of the Chabad package, right? But nevertheless, he says there's this and there's that. So what is it? What is it about the DNA of Chabad? And this is where we come to the Frierdiker Rebbe, against Yitzchak's yahrzeit is today. There was a chassid who passed out at Pinya Korf. So he bring the borough park where I live. It was a Purim. Purim, you'd say L'chaim, Freilach, and all that. And he asked all the guys there. They were all the Lubavitchers, from our shul. It's not a Chabad house. It's a Chabad shul, Beis Menachem on 16th Avenue, between 48th and 49th Street in Borough Park. He asked them, how was it that he was a Russian chassid, what was it that we were able to have self-sacrifice known as Mesiras Nefesh in Russia during Stalin's time, which meant do or die. And guess what? Many died. Many Chassidim never came back. His grandfather, Morozov, his grandfather was a Yid named Rebbe Elchanan Dov Morozov. Maybe he's named after him, I don't know. Well, he's named after Zayda. His Zayda was a tremendous Talmud Chacham and a Chassid and a masker in the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he learned in Lubavitch in the first year. All the accolades, trust me, he was a very special Jew. In 1938, he's arrested. Gone, goodbye, Mezet and Nishmed. They shot and killed him. Right? So this is real. He's named after him. Okay? So the question is, what is it about these Jews these Russian Chassidim, that they were willing to go into the fire? And the answer is their connection to the Rebbe, to the Tzaddik, to the Chassidus. And this is something that we have to really work on. It's not easy, and drill into our heads, because a friend is a friend, but DNA is something very different. The Frierdiker Rebbe, the Baal HaElul of Shevat, he made a pact with 10 Chassidim. One was his grandfather. Another Chassidim, he asked them, are you ready to give your life for Hashem if that's what needs to be done? And they said, we're ready. He made a krisis bris. A krisis bris is not, it's money in the bank. This is the way it is. It's for sure. It's not just, hey, I'm a good chassid when things are going nice. But when they're going to point the gun at me and they're going to say, if you don't stop, we're killing you. He doesn't give up. He doesn't give up. He says, if that's what you want to do, I have a mission. My mission is to serve Hashem. My mission is to have a cheder. My mission is to have a mikvah, women's mikvah, etc. My mission is Yiddishkeit, is Rebbe, is Chassidus. You want to kill me? Kill me. You want to torture me? Torture me. So so this opinion core, Farbrengen, he said that's the answer. That's what made us, in a sense, different than other Jews. You mentioned Lakewood, the Litvische Jews, other Chassidish Jews, not going into pointing any fingers, but most left. I can tell you names of rabbis and rabbonim, but it's not relevant now. Okay? They couldn't continue under Stalin. Stalin locked the doors of most shuls. How many shuls remained over? The Charov Shul in Moscow, the Charov Shul of there in Leningrad, and most others were locked. And the shul, by the way, where Ber Lazar has his empire, that shul was left over in 1940 because Rabbi Schusterman, the Rebbe's Balkore, got married there because the Russians wanted to show we're very nice. We have a shul open.
We left one.
Yeah, we left one shul. We have one shul open. Yeah, and why not? Who went there? Old geezers. Out to mention. Over the hill. But the little kinderlach, the little Yiddish kinderlach, that's what we want to stop. The next generation. And the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, said no. And that brings me to another story. But first, let's say L'chaim. And again, wish the neshama of Reb Tzvi Hirsch, Reb Yisrael should have an aliyah, and Yiddish Chassidish Nachas for his kids and grandkids. L'chaim.
Amen.
Yeah. No, it was on the singing.
We sing the niggun of Tzvi Hirsch.
Diesen Tag Zachem Tiduran Yatim Yeras Kazelayu Yatim Yeras Shitavoy Adin Adin Unaspor Son Anem Yes Son Anem Adin Unaspor Stus Banas Kanas Shadus Nashem Vizkaya
Are you not able to
Sheviskaya. Drushba nashe, drushba Sheviskaya. Эх, ты земля, зачем ты дурак? Я тебе рассказываю, я тебе рассказываю. Четыре наши мамочки, три наши папочки, две наши таблички, один у нас Бог. Что на небе, что на земле, один у нас Бог. Служба наша, наша дружба, наша близкая. Дружба наша, наша дружба, наша близкая. Эх, ты земля, зачем ты дурак? Я тебе рассказываю, я тебе рассчитываю. Пять книги три наши папочки, две наши таблички, один у нас Бог. Что на земле, что на земле, один у нас Бог. Служба наша, наша дружба, наша близкая. Служба наша, наша дружба, наша близкая. Ты земля, зачем ты дурак? Я тебе рассказываю, я тебе рассчитываю. Шесть книжек мишки, пять книжек кошки, четыре наши мамочки, три наши папочки, две наши таблички, один у нас Бог. Что на небе, что на земле, один у нас Бог. Служба наша, наша, наша близкая. Служба наша, наша дружба, наша близкая. Эх, ты земля, зачем ты дурак? Я тебе рассказываю, я тебе рассчитываю. Семь книги, шесть книги мишка, пять книжек Тори, четыре наши мамочки, три наши браточки, две наши таблички, один у нас Бог. Что на небе, что на земле, один у нас Бог. Служба наша, наша дружба, наша близкая. Служба наша, наша дружба, наша близкая.
Do for me. I need a Shevat. I need parnasa. I need a blessing. I need this. I need. What is I need? Once in Farbrengen in Los Angeles, everyone heard of Shlomo Carlebach. Shlomo Carlebach had a brother, Elichaim Carlebach. Elichaim Carlebach came to the Lubavitch Yeshiva in 1944. His parents were against it. He